What's up, dude?
Oh, just hanging out, doing a podcast with Ben Ornstein.
Yeah. I just recorded with Derek Reimer a few days ago, and now I'm recording with you. So, like, my streak of recording with people I've hosted other things with continues.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So it's like, what podcast is this really?
Yeah, it feels like you're not putting in a lot of effort to find guests, is what it looks like from the outside.
We call that tapping the network, actually. Yeah. It's a very savvy business move.
Yes. Instead of something we like, sorry, we don't have a Windows version, it's like, no, this is exclusively for Mac OS.
Yeah, it's all about the positioning.
It's all about the spin.
Yeah, exactly. And we have a Windows version, by the way. I think we're going to launch tuple Windows client, open, just like done, out of beta. Let's go. Pretty soon.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It's pretty cool.
DHH can keep using it then.
Yeah.
For the one pairing session he probably does every 3 years.
Yeah. Just a sprinkling of pairing.
Yeah.
All right. So we had a plan. My team and I had a plan to talk to you about Rust. Mm-hmm. And you were like, oh, bad news. I haven't written any Rust, basically.
Yeah. Barely, not enough to like talk about it. Let's put it that way. But maybe like there's conversation to be had that stems from that insight. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. So you rewrote Tailwind in Rust. Is that done? Is that shipped?
No. So that's not true. And
Great. Good crushing it.
Yeah. So we did rewrite all of Tailwind, which is kind of just like an interesting story, I guess, in general. Everyone says don't rewrite anything ever. My experience has been like rewriting things is awesome, and it's always
super
better.
Fun.
And it's super fun, and it turns out better. And yeah, I don't know. So we had Tailwind, the code base. It's been around since 2017 in various incarnations. It's been rewritten twice before, really, depending on how you think about it. It was originally written in like Less, the CSS preprocessing language, before it was ever even released. That was unsustainable because there's no way to like write tests or do anything. And as it just got more complicated, it just was getting out of control. So we rewrote it in JavaScript, PostCSS, and with no real sort of deliberate effort to make it fast or anything. It was just make it work, was the mindset then. And then eventually we rewrote it again because we had to change how the whole thing worked. So back in the day, Tailwind used to generate a giant style sheet, and then it would look at all your class names in your template files and delete all the classes you didn't use. Tailwind 3 kind of does the opposite, where it looks at all the classes in your templates and then only generates the classes that you need, which ends up just working out a lot better. But we had to rewrite it to do that because it's just like a totally different approach to doing the entire thing. Tailwind 4 is a rewrite again, but I kind of see it as sort of like the final form rewrite where it's like we really deeply understand what Tailwind is now and what it does and what the mental model of the whole system is. What if we just wrote code that actually represented that instead of like continuing to evolve this hodgepodge thing where we're like patching things on and figuring out just ways to add features without totally tearing things down and stuff like that.
Can we rewind a minute? I have like a slightly off or like an off-topic kind of question, which is I've been like thinking about redesigning my personal website, so it's not terrible. And I'm like very tempted to just literally have an HTML file, like no building whatsoever. This is like literally a static file that I edit that has HTML in it. And how bad is it to just throw the full Tailwind thing minified in the top there and just like
there's no such thing as the full Tailwind thing anymore.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because there's an infinite number of possible classes that it can generate because there's so much dynamic pieces to it. But there is like, this isn't a good solution for you, but there's like a JavaScript version of Tailwind that you can pull in as like a script tag that'll generate the CSS in the browser based on the stuff that you're using.
Interesting.
That you can also do.
And that would let me skip a build step, right? If I do that,
you'd have no build step. There's a few like little downsides that will not impact you, which are details around like the way that it works is basically it has to wait for the classes to exist in the HTML, then it pulls them out and generates the styles for them. So if there's ever a situation where an element might appear on the screen before the JavaScript has a chance to figure out what class is there and apply the styles, you might see like a flicker of unstyled content.
Like if the class shows up after the element or something? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's more like, say you have like a dialogue that opens, and when you open it, it inserts a new element that wasn't there before, and you want it to say like fade in. It's not going to fade in because like the styles that apply like the fade haven't been generated by Tailwind. Like it's going to be like 1 frame late, you know what I mean? But it's enough that like the transition doesn't happen. But that's like the only situation where it really matters. The current JavaScript thing is kind of clunky too, because we have to, it was kind of built after the fact. We kind of took Tailwind, the CLI tool, and then tried to like basically like monkey patch anything that touched the file system and all this stuff and turn it into something that could run in the browser. So it's a pretty big JavaScript file full of clunky stuff. The new code base, we have a very pure core now that doesn't know IO or any of that stuff. And we can ship just that core to the browser now. And it's extremely small and extremely fast. And so there, a lot of interesting, whatever. I don't know. We're all over the place already, but
that's cool. No, that's great. I want a Patrick Collison style, like personal website, or just like one of these extremely bare bones. It looks like a text file.
Yeah, where it looks like it would have fit on like the Apple computer that was in like the tech room at your high school that had a resolution of 640 by 480 or whatever.
Pretty much, yeah, exactly. It could have appeared on any screen between like from now to like 1980 and been totally fine and like would fit on a floppy disk.
And you literally want it to be an HTML file. Like you want to write blog posts where like every time you start a new paragraph, you have to do angle bracket P, closing angle bracket.
I mean, like, I don't really
like
want to do that.
When the rubber hits the road here.
Yeah.
Or do you just want a nice theme for like a CMS? I feel like the older I get, the more I understand the benefits of a CMS.
I feel like I want like, I guess though, like I just like there's so much appeal to me right now. I'm like I directly edit this file. It's like so simple. There's no generation happening. There's no build step. No JavaScript is involved whatsoever, nor ever will be. Like I want the simplicity of like index.html.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
If you were gonna, I know what you mean, but then,
Do I?
At the same time, I think you want to write in Markdown, you know?
I do actually want to write in Markdown. It's true. That's why I want the Tailwind Pros plugin.
Yeah, but
that was peak Tailwind for me.
You still need to compile the Markdown to HTML.
Yeah, I know.
So there's still a build step.
Yeah, I guess there is. Maybe I need someone who knows programming to like set me up a simple static.
Yeah, like website. some eager young lad, you know.
That's right. Some new
sort
hotshot
of person who maybe would help you fix your printer, you know.
Exactly. Who like will help me lift heavy luggage so I don't hurt my old back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. So you ruined my life by getting rid of minified Tailwind being a thing on a CDN. But
well, here's the thing. I was going to say, if your site never had new styles, like you just kind of said, this is what it looks like. This is what articles look like. That's done. There's no new visual anything that's ever going to appear except new articles that look the same as the old articles. Then you could just compile the JavaScript once, throw it in the repository, compile the CSS once and pretend that it's a CSS file that you wrote by hand once and just sits there, you know?
Yeah, that's okay.
That's another
that
move. Yeah.
I like that. That seems better, I think. Okay, cool. Well, that's helpful. All right, so Tailwind 4. Like how is this a big reimagining of the system?
Yeah. Okay. Good question. So the original motivation for it was sort of two things. One, it's really, a lot of it is kind of one thing, but the one thing has multiple pieces to it. The one thing is it sounded fun. And
yes.
And also the other piece to that is like, this code base and project is really important to me, and I want to be like obscenely proud of every corner of the code base. And that's just not the state that it was in up until now. It's just kind of...
These are the best motivations to do this kind of thing. I love it.
Yeah. And it was killing my motivation for the project in a lot of ways, you know, like just feeling like if I poked around in there, I'd find like some horrible Band-Aid fix we had to put in. That was just, it just felt like we hadn't been treating like Codebase with respect. You know what I mean? And I think everyone on the team was sort of feeling the same way. It's like kind of like, what do they call it? Like broken windows theory or something, where it's just like, oh, well, we did something fucking gross there. So the Codebase is already done for. So what does it matter if I do a nice implementation here or a dirty implementation here? And it takes a lot of discipline to like fight that once it's already started creeping in. So I kind of just got everyone rallied around this idea of like, let's like get init a fresh thing and just like approach it with extreme care, you know, and just try to make like the best thing that we can possibly make, even like in irrational ways. Like, let's decide when we use like / comments versus like /* comments and be consistent about that everywhere. Let's decide, do we end comments with a period or do we not end comments with a period? You know, like these sorts of like superficial things.
Did you have to convince people to do this? It sounds like every developer's dream.
No, I don't think so. The thing that I think is interesting about it from like a team dynamics perspective is like these same people on the team, myself included, who are totally willing to just say like, fuck it, it's already a mess, who cares? Take basically no encouragement to get excited about the idea of let's make the perfect thing and keep it perfect forever. You know, I think everyone wants to do that. So it's exciting for everyone on the team, I think, to feel like they work at a company that's going to let them do that, and let alone like place value on it and almost hold them accountable for it, you know?
Right. Because if we're doing this whole rewrite, it's going to be worth it. Like, don't even think about making it not amazing.
If we screw up, if we get off the rails, then like, what was the point? You know, we have to like hold the line. I think back to that tweet that me and you've talked about in the past that Toby shared ages ago, where he talks about like the hardest thing about like building a business is, I can't remember exactly what he said, but the essence of it was basically like setting a bar for quality and like preventing like regression to the mean, you know, just like holding it like as tight as you can. Because like that's the natural state of everything, including like myself, you know, which is honestly the hardest part. It's easier to sort of hold other people to your standards than yourself in a lot of ways.
You're more likely to extend yourself some leeway.
Exactly.
Perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was kind of the big motivation for it, was just like, let's make it as clean as possible. And then combined with that, it was like, what's something that we could just put an absurd amount of focus on that would never be like a dumb thing to invest in. And we thought, let's just make it the fastest possible version of Tailwind ever. Let's make it insanely fast, basically at the expense of anything. I don't really care like what it takes. If the code is harder to understand, but it's faster, I don't care. I just want it to be faster. And so that benefits users sort of, you know. Tailwind was already pretty fast, but like people love fast things. But it was more just like a really interesting challenge for us, because it's just like a clear goal and gives you a way to sort of measure what you're doing. And it was also like, everyone on the team is interested in performance. No one on the team has ever worked on a project where that got to be the focus to that extent. So it's sort of a learning experience too. Everyone's just excited to like learn more about the stuff and get better at it and understand like when it's faster to like access something in memory versus recompute it, or stuff like that. And we had this sort of Tailwind 3's internals was like, a lot of the speed came from like very aggressive caching. So we had this goal, like, how can we make Tailwind 4 faster than V3 with no caching, you know, which is
because there's like too much there's like conceptual overhead for the caching. Like it's hard to think about.
It's a lot of complexity in the code. And if we're going to put any caching in, like, let's do it in a way where it's like layered on and not like just intertwined into like horrible places where you can't tell if it's a cache or not a cache.
Got it.
You know? Yeah. So that was kind of like the goal, and that led to a few different things. Stop me at any point if you want to like talk about anything in specific.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so Tailwind 4 is like speed and beauty, it seems like, is the kind of goals here.
Yeah. And the other thing that falls out of it too is like part of the beauty thing is just modeling the problem as sort of accurately as possible based on our understanding of it.
Yeah.
And a major benefit of that is that a bunch of like features fall out of Tailwind for free that Tailwind didn't have before because things were not modeled well.
Got it. Yep.
So some of these are like really specific, and you need to kind of be like a Tailwind power user to even appreciate it. But I'll talk about them anyways, and for the benefit of the audience, even if like
I'll just nod like I understand what's happening.
But there's like some things in Tailwind where have you ever built a website with Tailwind yourself?
A bit, yes.
So there's like some sort of advanced features for styling things based on the state of other elements, for example. So we have features like group hover. So say you have like an element and you want to say, I want something about this element to change when the parent element is hovered, you know? So you could do that in CSS, like you can imagine what the selector is for that. But to do that in Tailwind, where you're just sticking classes on things, you somehow have to like connect those. So in Tailwind, the way you do that is on the parent element, and it can be any parent up the tree. This is why it sort of needs to be specific, but you add this class called group. That's sort of like a marker that's saying, this is the group that we care about. Then on the child, you add a class that says group hover, and then whatever you want to do, like change the background color or add an underline or whatever.
Yep.
And group hover is an example of like a group version of the existing hover modifier. So you can already change something on regular hover, on regular focus, but we added group hover, group focus. And the way all that was built in Tailwind 3 was we just hard coded those in. There was a group hover feature, a group focus feature, a group active, group disabled, group whatever. Like the whole list goes on. We just looped over them and generated them all.
Yep.
With the way that the system is modeled in Tailwind, and sorry, the big downside of how that worked is that if someone added like a custom thing to Tailwind, because people add like their own little modifiers that represent different selectors, there would be no group version of it because we just hard coded in all the ones that existed.
Yep.
Tailwind 4, because we figured out a way to just model the problem better, now like group is this, we call it like a compound variant where it takes like another variant as an argument. And even if that variant is registered after the fact by the user, it still just works.
Yeah.
So that's like an example of like a feature that just like exists in Tailwind 4 that we didn't redesign Tailwind 4 with this thing in mind, but it actually kind of just happened for free. We literally just rebuilt it, tried to think, I don't want to loop over all these things. How can we like model this better? What concepts do we have to invent that didn't exist before? And now we make it work. And then you almost realize after the fact, wait a minute, that means this works now, you know? And it's just like such a exciting moment when you get features for free just because you sort of modeled the problem better.
Yeah, that feels like an incredibly strong positive feedback that like you made a good choice there. It's like stuff just happened.
Yeah, exactly. Every time you can like delete a conditional because you do something better somewhere else, that just means, oh, that actually is just how it works now.
Right.
You know, stuff like that.
Like getting your data structures and the modeling, like the problem domain modeling right, should lead to that kind of outcome.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then well, like, are you going in the right direction at all? Like that.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of internal changes that we're excited about that gave us those sorts of benefits and made things easier.
That's something interesting heuristic to me, which is like, are we getting things for free with this approach?
Yeah.
Let's just ask about of the three approaches we're considering. Like, what gives us things for free? Because that's probably a really strong sign that like that's the right direction.
100%. It's like swimming like upstream versus downstream, you know?
Yeah.
When things like start falling out of the architecture that you didn't expect, that just start to work.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
It's just a beautiful, beautiful feeling.
Right. You've got the right abstractions, probably. Like the right, like you've...
Yeah, the code represents the problem accurately. You know what I mean? Like it's just like modeled better, you know?
Right. Yep. That's cool.
Yeah, so like that was like a big point of focus, like specifically changes that we made to clean things up. In the old code base, class names were just like passed around as strings a lot, and things that needed to like pull out little bits of them to detect like, oh, we need to apply the hover thing here, or this is like a color that has a slash after it, so we have to change the opacity. That was all like string manipulation that just happened in random parts of the code base. And like the new version of the code base, the first thing that we do when we find a class is we parse it into like an abstract syntax tree that we have created ourselves, like a data structure that represents, okay, it has an array of modifiers at the beginning. Each modifier is a data type that possibly has like an arbitrary part or a named part. And if it's color, it has like an opacity. And now it's just an object that gets passed around everywhere, and you can get exactly what you need anytime you want, instead of having to just like rip through strings and pull things out with regular expressions. Like you wouldn't really even believe how bad the old code base was, I guess, in this sort of regard, because it just evolved over time from something so simple. So when you know the level of complexity of the needs, like at the beginning, you can just do such a better job.
Did this ship yet? Is Tailwind 4 out?
No, there's an alpha out, and that came out like first week of March or something like that.
How long has it been? When did you start working on it?
As soon as like January 3rd or whatever, the first day back after like the New Year's kind of holidays were.
Okay. So you're like only like 4 months into this, basically, something like that.
Yeah, only really 2, because once we got the alpha out, we shifted gears back to some like commercial work that we need to get caught up on. And we're about to release that stuff like this week, next week. Then we're going to spend probably the next 2 to 4 months wrapping up V4 proper.
It's interesting it's interesting to me how fast that went. Like, why didn't you get sucked into like some of the downsides of rewriting things? Is it because Tailwind is just kind of small?
It can be small. Like the code base is way smaller than it was before. I think the biggest thing is more of a project management story than it is a code story. Right. So we were just so it took 2 months, but it took like 2 years at the same time, because so many of the things that we did in those 2 months were things that we sort of prototyped in different repositories leading up to that time, just to like know if they worked or not, and then just kept that in the back of our mind as something we want to like include when we do the V4 thing, if that ever happens. And just a lot of ideas around how to approach problems that just like are hammock thoughts, that you need to just wrestle with for a long time. So a lot of this was very pure execution, because we had much clearer ideas, I guess, of how we wanted certain things to work. But in terms of getting it actually done in that period of time, we were very explicit about what was going to be in the alpha and what was not. So there's some big pieces that are not in there, like backwards compatibility. So historically, Tailwind has had a JavaScript configuration file. Like V4 does not support that right now. And we'll need to figure out how we want to do that going forward. But we really wanted to write this like V4 code base as if we were just going to do, say this was the first version, knowing everything that we know now, and there was no baggage, like what would it be? So anything that we kind of wish we didn't have, we just didn't build. And we did it intentionally because I want to make sure that when we add support for that stuff, it's layered on to like the clean core and not just mixed in with it, because we tried to do it from the beginning. So if we just build for like the pure, happy, cleanest, exactly what we wish the code base was path, and then backwards compatibility is as much of a layer as possible, that to me just felt like more likely to end up with a project that we were proud of. Like when V5 comes around and we feel comfortable getting rid of certain things that, are not really the encouraged path anymore. I want that to be like deleting a file. I don't want that to be like hunting around for all the places that cared about this backwards compatibility thing,
Got it. So you're kind of like constraining the mess into like a spot, or like the wrinkles or whatever.
Yeah. It's a deliberately small scope. It's very complete in the sense that we just finished up the headless UI 2.0 documentation site. It's a Tailwind 4 project. It's going to be live at the end of this week. And it totally works. And we were not limited really in any way, you know?
Okay.
But yeah, there's a lot of things, hardish parts missing.
Yeah. I mean, are you worried that all the beauty is going to come unraveled when you are faced with these gnarly bits?
I am not too worried about it, mostly because we are so determined for that not to happen. You know what I mean? Like that is the goal. So I don't think anyone will settle for that happening. We will find ways to avoid that from happening. Even to the point where, like, one of the ways we've been talking about dealing with some backwards compatibility stuff is not to make the old thing work, but to just make it impossibly easy to upgrade to the new thing. So code mod tooling and stuff like that can like go through your project and change things in a very bulletproof way. Stuff like that where, okay, now we don't actually have to support the old thing because we've just helped you get to the new thing. And the more I think about that, the more I feel there's a lot of value in it. I feel like if you let an old deprecated thing work, people will use it and be content in a way that they've been able to upgrade to the new version. But they'll also kind of just feel like that they're not done upgrading yet. You know what I mean? It's just like, okay, this feels like a stopgap temporary thing. I'm still not doing it the best practice way or the encouraged way. I'm kind of relying on this legacy thing. And yes, technically the version number of the version that I have installed is the latest thing, but I don't feel like I'm using the latest thing. So I kind of feel like just making the old thing work is not actually helping people with the core problem, which is they want to feel like they're on the new and shiny, you know? So how can we like actually get them to the true new and shiny, not just, you know? So that's something I'm thinking about a lot. And that's something we're going to be putting a lot of time into the next couple months, is exploring some of this code mod stuff.
So you say backwards compatibility, but you're not going to be backwards compatible. You're going to have new ways of doing things that people will have to change to get to.
I'm not sure yet. That's the thing. Like I kind of think in a perfect world, we would have both. The old thing would work, but if you haven't done anything too crazy, where we can sort of teach the computer how to upgrade your code base, that the computer can upgrade your code base and you don't have to use the old way, you know? Specific examples like the JavaScript configuration file. Now in Tailwind 4, the encouraged path is to like set up all your colors and stuff in your CSS file. And we could totally ingest your JavaScript configuration file, figure out what the resolved sort of color palette and everything is that you've configured, and then spit out the equivalent CSS file. And then you don't need the JavaScript file. But of course, people do crazy things in JavaScript files. And if we can't figure out a way to translate that into a CSS file, we probably should just let the JavaScript file continue to work, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. But then again, like if you are doing a major version bump and you really value the like beauty and elegance of the new solution, is hard backwards incompatibility where you just remove this thing like on the table?
I don't know. I kind of think no, because I just feel like my personal stance is that open source maintainers generally underappreciate the importance of backwards compatibility, even with major version increases. I'd rather make like very small breaking changes that affect barely anybody than and use major versions as an opportunity to do that. Like my general strategy that has worked in Tailwind in the past is sort of like do a major version where we introduce a new way to do something, stop documenting the old way to do something, wait a few years, then make the old thing like no longer work when it basically affects nobody because everyone's forgotten that was even a way to do things, you know? And I feel like that's sort of the most considered way to to do it. In my head, the way I imagine it working specifically in like the JavaScript configuration file case is there's just going to be some code near the very beginning of like when the library starts to do its thing that looks at that file, turns it into the exact same data structure we'd get from parsing your CSS, and then passes that into the core. So it's like an onion layered sort of thing. I don't know if you ever...
Right.
I did a podcast with Michelle Boo, who I think she might still be at Stripe, but she was at Stripe at the time.
You were making me think of the Stripe thing.
Yeah, the Stripe API upgrade thing. Like they basically try to keep like the core API nice, and they write layers around it to preserve backwards compatibility with like the changing in the API data structures and stuff. And it just goes through this like pipeline of transformations. So if you're on like the 2013 Stripe API, they have like a layer that you hit that then upgrades it to like the 2014 Q2 one that upgrades it to the 2014 Q4 one that upgrades it to the 2016 one, until your request matches like what the expected input is of the current API.
Yeah, that's kind of insanely baller. I love that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It's super cool.
Yeah, so that's how I envision it though, is that same idea. Like how can we basically upgrade you on the edge,
Right.
So that the core can stay clean. And obviously until we actually do it, I can't know for sure that it's going to be as perfect as I hope, but that's the dream.
And unlike Stripe, you will eventually remove that edge translation.
That is the nice thing about not running a payment processor. Yes.
Right.
We'll probably eventually remove it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bit less important to you to keep support a way of doing it from 6 years ago.
And again, I think the code mod stuff is valuable too. There's probably certain breaking changes we've made that would be better to just give people a code mod and don't even support the old thing, because there's a couple things where like we've changed the order of two pieces of a class name, for example. And I could either give you a configuration option that preserves like the legacy one, that now you have some configuration option that's staring you in the face saying, LOL, you're actually using the old version of Tailwind. Or I could just give you like a tool that generates the diff. You open a PR to your code base and just compare them. And then now it's done. And I don't need to live with this configuration option in my thing for the rest of the time,
Yeah, so that's pretty nice.
I think we got to think about it on a change by change basis.
Got it.
But yeah.
So sometimes you're going to add the compatibility like layer at the edge, and sometimes you're just going to say, because this is an easily automated change.
Yeah.
You're going to have to do it. We're going to make you do it.
That's how I'm thinking about it right now, for sure.
This is pretty sensible. I like that.
Yeah. I guess like in terms of the Rust stuff, just to kind of talk about that, because I think that's what you're expecting us to talk about. I think I can talk about what we used it for, but I think it's also interesting to talk about why maybe we didn't need to use it as much.
Yeah, so Tailwind 4 is not, does it have any Rust components or no?
It does have some Rust.
Okay.
But it's carefully factored. So Tailwind, the way Tailwind works, there's a few stages to the processing, right? So the very first thing we have to do is find all of the files in your project that have class names in them and pull out all those class names and then generate the CSS for all those class names. So if you think about like just those two top level stages, the first step we are now doing in Rust. So we have a crate that we've written in Rust that can receive the paths to where all your templates are, either your configured paths. We've also been working on features to sort of auto detect them, which we're able to do in Rust quite fast, which is interesting. But that part we wrote in Rust and get major benefits from it for two reasons. So the JavaScript version of this, where we'd look at a file and try to find all the class names, the only way to do that and have it be fast in JavaScript is regular expressions, because regular expressions are heavily optimized by the engine to like very native type code, but they're insane. The regular expressions that we have to write and dynamically create and maintain, if you run into a bug where it's like, oh, for some reason this class, when I have this quoted brace in this one spot, doesn't work, and it seems like it should because it's so similar to this other class, trying to find the spot to add that allowed character in some regular expression is non-trivial. And like highly terrifying because you don't know what the consequences are. In Rust, though, we're able to rewrite all that logic as like a byte level parser. So now we just open up the file and we just scan through it character by character with a state machine that we maintain. That's just like, are we currently consuming a potential class? If so, then there's all these rules about which characters are allowed and which spots and whatever. Otherwise, we just like skip characters until we see a spot that could be the start of a class and then start consuming them. And we can write that with just pure, regular, human understandable loops and conditionals, not regular expressions that are really hard to sort of figure out because it compiles to native code. So it's just as fast as the regular expression engine in Node, actually faster.
Are you using a parser generator for this?
No, it's just written by hand. We did try a parser generator and it was much slower than writing it by hand.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's how that part works in Rust now. But then like the other huge benefit is this is like extremely parallelizable work. Because all it is like, if you can get all these text files into memory and then just like spread that work across all the threads, pulling in all the class names and dumping them into like one shared set. So you only get unique copies of each class. You can do that across all cores, and Rust has concurrency and JavaScript does not, Node does not. So that instantly makes that, 12 times faster or something compared to how it would be in JavaScript. And then also just way faster because it's faster to do the same work, even single threaded.
Yeah.
But there was even there's all sorts of just like interesting little things that we had to test and benchmark to figure out the fastest way to do stuff. Like, so of course you don't want Tailwind to try and like generate the CSS for the same class name multiple times. So if the flex class exists in 10 of your files, you don't want to pass it to Tailwind 10 times. Because that's wasted work. You already know what CSS that generates, and it's only going to appear in the final CSS once anyways. So, figuring out what's the fastest way to end up with a unique list of class names is an interesting problem. Do we put them all into like a list and then like dedupe the items in that list in Rust, especially since you have to do this from across threads, which is kind of interesting? Or do we create a set, which is like, okay, well, that's interesting because a property of a set is that every item is unique. Can we dump things into a shared set? And that worked, and that was pretty fast. But then we also discovered that by default, like the way that a set works, right, is it has to like, under the hood, it's using like hashing algorithms to like figure out where things should go and stuff. Because it's not just like a continuous list of things in memory. It has to like,
right.
So under the hood, in Rust, by default, they use like a cryptographically secured hashing algorithm because that's important for some use cases, but it's not important for our use case. So realizing, hey, we can swap out the hashing algorithm with like a faster hashing algorithm that's not cryptographically secure, you get like a ton of, performance benefits from that. So these are like the sorts of little knobs and dials that we're like tweaking and playing with and just benchmarking everything. It's totally gamified, right? Because you're just running these like measurements in the command line and just saying, can we get this under 10 milliseconds? Oh, can we get it under 5 milliseconds? And comparing implementations and stuff. But that's the only part that happens in Rust is just like pulling the class names out and then all of the work to actually take a class name, figure out what all the different parts mean, generate the CSS, turn that into like a big CSS file. All that is happening in Node still. And that's by far the bulk of the code. And then the other interesting like constraint is, okay, we want to ship a browser-based version of this, like we were talking about before, like the script tag. Well, if we start writing things in Rust, how the hell do we ship that to the browser? We have to compile it to WASM, which has this huge size overhead. Now we're going to ship like a 7 megabyte like JavaScript file or something to the browser. That's horrible. So we also had this constraint in our heads of making sure that anything that had to happen, anything we did in Rust was work that didn't ever need to happen in the browser. So in the CDN based version, we don't have to like look at text files and pull out strings, right? We can actually just like look at the HTML tree and look at literally the class attribute on each element and pull those out, which you can just use like existing browser APIs to pull out the class list from each element. And that was like a huge unlock because it let us, it helped us understand what could go in Rust and what could go in JavaScript. Because in a regular project that's written in React or whatever, a lot of class names appear in places that aren't the class attribute because you're doing the work to figure out the class in some function somewhere and then putting it in the class attribute. But in the browser, that's just like the finished HTML. You know, the classes are in their final place. So we don't need to look at the whole file. We literally only need to look at the class attribute, you know? So that was like recognizing that it gave us this clear line of like what could happen in Rust, what could happen in JavaScript. Anyways, I feel like I'm just blabbering about stuff.
No. You're not. This is great. This is super good. Well, I'm curious what the testing story is in Tailwind 4. Mm-hmm. Are there a lot of tests?
There's a lot of tests, yes. There's fewer tests in V3 because I think we're a bit more intentional about how to test different things. So everything is using this tool called vtest, which is just the current kind of flavor of the month JavaScript test runner, and it works quite well. Pretty happy with that. There's a lot of sort of pretty outside in tests where like the input to the test is a list of class names and like the CSS file that contains some of the configuration information. And we just sort of test, given this list of class names and like this color configuration, this is the CSS that should be generated. And that's where we get probably the most confidence in terms of how like the overall system works. But there are parts of the system that are unit tested too. And that's mostly a developer experience decision because a lot of time you're working on like a little function and I just want to know that when I put this into it, that this comes out. I think the way we've generally decided when to unit test something versus when to sort of test things at the system level is, could I imagine this function being a package that I installed, you know? Because if I did extract it as a package, well, then I would write unit tests for it because I would want the package to have its own tests. So I find that to be like a useful heuristic for deciding if something feels like useful to have unit tests for versus tested a bit more black box where you have a bit more flexibility to sort of move things around and refactor things, you know?
So if you would extract it as a package, you will write unit tests for it? Is that the heuristic?
If I could imagine, almost like if someone else had written this, would I have just installed it as a package? You know what I mean?
Okay. And then if the answer is yes, then you do write unit tests for it?
That's yes. Yeah. That's when anything that we have unit tests for generally fits that criteria. It's not really deliberate, but like if I just look out and look at things, that's what they seem to have in common. Like a very specific part of the framework that has quite a few unit tests is we have this one function whose only job is to take a string and split it on a certain character into all the different parts, but in a way that's like aware of braces and quotes. So you can imagine like in Tailwind, if you have like, so something we have to do a lot is if you have like hover, focus, active, flex, we have to split on all those colons to get all those parts out. 3 of them are modifiers. One of them is like a utility class. But some utility classes in Tailwind, like the content utility, which is the sort of thing you use with a lot of like pseudo elements and stuff, content can take like a string as its argument. So you could have like a colon inside the 2 quotes of the content property. So if we have like hover, content, dash, square bracket, quote, quote, square bracket, and we try to split that on colons, we don't want to split on the last one because it's like quoted colon, you know?
It's in the string, yeah.
And similarly, we don't want to split on colons that are within braces or anything either. So we can't just use like the regular string split function in JavaScript. We have to write our own function that sort of traverses the string, detects when we're inside like a pair of braces and ignores the split character there. And so we have this function called segment is what we called it that did that. And I just looked up synonyms for the word split And
Yep. I like segment. I was going to say that's a good name.
So it segments the string into these different things. But yeah, it's aware of sort of like nested structures, basically, in quotes. And that's like a good example of something that I could see being an NPM package, you know?
I see.
So that has unit tests because we knew exactly what it needed to do. It's used everywhere. It's useful in a lot of different ways. And we just threw a bunch of test cases at it. And it's also like an interesting place to like do an insane amount of performance optimizations and benchmarking because it literally runs like thousands of times in the code base.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Huh. Right. And I can imagine like, you discover a bug in a certain edge case and like you don't want to throw that in like a end-to-end test probably.
Yeah, literally just merged a PR to do that yesterday. Where we had a bug where, let me remember exactly what it was. It was to do with braces in quotes. So we weren't accounting for that properly.
Okay.
And we could have written like some test that has like a Tailwind class that sort of does that and makes sure that it works. And we actually did do that too, just to sort of prove that. But for that one test, there's like 9 unit tests that show like all the different characters that could possibly in quotes and stuff like that and handle them properly. And that fix actually made it faster too, which was kind of interesting because we realized that once you're inside of a quote, you don't need to keep track of the braces and make sure they balance because like, you're in quotes. These are just characters that don't syntactically matter. So we could just like skip processing every character until we find like the matching quote. So that was like a delight to fix a bug that makes the code faster, you know?
Yeah. Did you know it was faster because you're like checking the benchmarks after you do it, or are there some like automated benchmarking that happens?
We benchmarked it after, which is how we knew, but it was also the sort of thing where when you're writing the code, you sort of just have a sense. It's like, oh, I'm doing less work now, you know? Yeah.
Nice. So when do you think Tailwind 4 comes out?
I had a goal originally for end of June. I don't think that's going to happen now because we're a little bit behind on the stuff we were supposed to have out this week. And we have a team retreat coming up in 2 weeks. So I kind of think we're not going to start on anything new till after the team retreat. We won't be back from the team retreat until like May 20th. And then I've got another trip in June. So I think we're going to try to get a beta out at the end of June, which is basically going to be hopefully all the features are there, but we haven't updated the docs site and redesigned the website and stuff like that. And then do more of a marketing project focus for like July, August and do like a proper release then. But I don't know. I can't wait much longer than that because we have other work to do too. Thankfully, it is good for business for us in general to like release open source stuff. Even if we've released nothing new or changed nothing about the commercial stuff, there's just a lot of sort of activity and excitement that comes around with the open source things. So
right.
Yeah.
So sales go up when you release a new.
Sales go up when we release open source stuff, which is thank God,
The
because
dream.
otherwise it would be it would be scary to be investing time in the open source stuff. It would feel stressful, you know what I mean? Whereas at least now we sort of know that the open source stuff is good for business, thankfully. So
That's so nice. You live a charmed existence business wise.
I do. Yeah. In a lot of ways, I take it for granted a lot and, big time.
Like you're working on the core free thing is like doing marketing.
Yeah.
Like that's most people don't have that, I think. Like marketing is separate. It's not an outcome of working on the core thing.
It's kind of separate though, because I think there's a world where we could work on it and never talk about it until it was done and not get any of the benefits, you know?
Well, once you launch it, that's probably there's going to be a significant benefit, right? Like Tailwind 4 will cause a lot of buzz inherently.
Yeah, that's true. But even when we're working on V4 and I'm tweeting out benchmarks and stuff like that, sales are higher on those days.
Yeah,
you know?
Totally. Yep.
So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a separate marketing effort, but it's really it's using the sawdust of the improving the core thing.
Yeah, and that is really just like by necessity. When you're this small, I feel like all you can really do is you have to just like try to hit as many birds with that stone as you can, you know? And thankfully it's good. It's the right type of content for our audience too. You know, a lot,
Right.
I don't know. There's a lot to be thankful for in terms of things just like happening to be the right way to do things in our situation, you know?
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Totally. I mean, every time I tell somebody the Tailwind origin story, I just feel like it's the most preposterous thing.
And what's your version of the Tailwind origin story?
I was gonna say, like, I kind of want to run the story by you to make sure I'm not just like spreading this like fake narrative. But the way I say it is, you were trying to make a SaaS, I think, to sell info products.
Yep.
Kitetail.
Yep.
And you had this little set of like CSS utility classes that you would copy between projects to like let you go faster as you were styling things. And you were doing live streams to try to like market the thing. And people kept being like, "What's that CSS framework?" And you're like, "It's not a framework. It's just like this little file I have." And then like, "Stop talking about that." And like you would keep going, and they're like, "No, what's that CSS framework?" And it's like, "The framework. What's the framework?" And eventually you just like, "God damn it!" And you gave up. And we're like, "Fine, it's a framework. Here you go." And like you released it, and that was the start of Tailwind.
Yeah, that's 100% it. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
This is so crazy.
I know. It's awesome.
Like, it's so funny. So yeah, this is like, I often tell these people this story in the because I'm trying to like tell them like to just go do stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Where, like make like work, like if you hadn't worked in public, you wouldn't have known that this thing was that useful.
Yeah. And even if I hadn't worked even for people who aren't working in public, I do generally feel, I think like Matt Wensing tweeted this once. It was like, come up with an idea, build it, run into some really hard problem, solve that problem. The thing that you did there, that's your real business, you know?
Totally. Yeah. I think there's some real wisdom in that.
Yeah. Just do anything and you will encounter real problems, you know?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. The real problem was the problems we found along the way.
Yeah, exactly. The real business was the businesses we found along the way, you know?
Yeah. Because, yeah, like that first idea, like maybe you're really good at this, but probably you picked something stupid. Like you never launched Kitetail. That never worked.
Never. And I never would because it had to have like PayPal integration. I don't want to maintain that code, you know, and there's taxes and like all sorts of horrible things. But I'm so glad that, and I was real serious about it too, which I think is maybe like another reason why I did go like very all in on it. Like I did want to build it for real. I wanted it to be a real thing. I really believed that's what I was doing, which I think is the only reason that I did the live streaming and all this other stuff and encountered what the market actually wanted from me, you know?
Right, totally. And this is not like an isolated thing. I think there's a number of good examples of these. Like Segment comes to mind. Yeah. Or like the Segment Analytics.js.
Isn't that Slack too, you know?
Yeah,
sort of?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so as well. So it's just, I think this happens kind of frequently.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, so I often, when people are like saying like, "Oh, I can't, like, what do I do for business ideas? How do I find an idea?" I'm often kind of like, look at the things you're doing at work. Like, what are the internal libraries you built that are actually useful?
Yeah.
That people like, that you'd be sad if they went away. Like, pay attention to those. Maybe like commercialize that.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, it's crazy the problems that you run into when you just try to do a real thing. Like, yeah, I'm itching to build like a hiring tool now because we've been hiring. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Are you going to do that or what?
I don't know. I am thinking about it. It's definitely, I'm telling myself it would be good for Tailwind if we did it because it would be the most real sort of application that we'd ever sort of worked on. But obviously it's a big project to work on. My concern around doing it, I think, is that we do it so little that I don't think it's reasonable to like pretend to be an authority on it. But maybe that's not a reason to not do it. Can always learn, you know?
Yeah. To me, the biggest risk is actually just that it's just so different than what your core business is. That's like, it's almost like a new company.
Yeah. But in some ways that's kind of like the thing that's fun about it too. This is like a whole other topic. This is like a topic for our other podcast. But I do often wonder if like my long-term best play is to keep pushing hard on the Tailwind business or to recognize that the Tailwind business is my opportunity to build the next bigger business. Like this is the thing that will fund the next thing, and it won't last forever. And I should probably, maybe I should take advantage of that. You know, it's so hard to know. Is it like, this is working, why would you get distracted and work on something else? Or is it like you have this amazing cash flowing thing and like a bunch of runway, now's your opportunity to invest before like that goes away? And historically, that's what I've always done. You know, like first book funds me building the next course, which funds me and Steve doing refactoring UI, which funds me and Steve building Tailwind UI, which I run forever, or funds the next thing. I'm not sure, you know? So
yeah. I mean, I almost feel like it's like, the way you're framing it feels wrong to me, sort of, where you're like, oh, should I do this while I have this runway? And it's like, okay, like you already have a successful enough business. You already have, it's like, this is not a money thing. It's not like to like make enough money to live anymore.
Sure. Yeah. There's multiple pieces.
Now it's like, how do you want your life to be? And so to me, it's like, if you want your life to be a thing where like you work on a new business, like if you like feel called to and compelled to start this new thing, then like absolutely do it, regardless of what the, like whether or not it's like a financially whatever thing. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. I guess in my head, I feel like I've seen it happen to other people in the past where they had like a good thing going and they should have like made the leap to like go all in on it, but then they didn't. And then the thing kind of like fizzled out a little bit and they sort of missed their chance to sort of like go all in, you know?
To go all in on something else, you mean?
Even to just like go all in on the first thing. So they had the chance to do like the next thing. Like the comparison I guess I'm seeing in my mind with this is like, does Tailwind, is there enough people, and this is the whole fucking lifetime pricing conversation forever, right? But like, do we run out of programmers eventually who like are wanted to buy the templates and stuff that we sell, you know?
I just think no.
Yeah, maybe no. So maybe we could just do this same thing forever, you know? Mm-hmm. But eventually Tailwind's not going to be cool anymore, you know?
Yeah. But I mean, like, I don't know, good luck competing with Tailwind 4. It seems like you just kind of keep...
I know, I just have to remind myself that it's our job to like keep it cool. Like React is still cool and it's over 10 years old at this point, you know? And that's by continuing to evolve it.
You reach a point where you become immortal as a technology. Yeah. Like 10 years into Tailwind, you're probably, like just forever, there will be like Tailwind projects.
Yeah, there will be Tailwind projects, but will there be like people choosing Tailwind for new projects? That's true. Yeah,
because you're pretty much making money on the people that are new to it, most likely.
Yeah,
but again, I don't feel like what if the gravy train stops and like no more money comes out? It feels like the raw motivation for you to pick the next thing or not.
I agree. Like I'm fine.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Yeah.
So just choose what kind of life you want to have.
Yeah, I don't know that I want to have a life where I run a SaaS business where I have to have like 20 customer support staff and all that sort of thing. Personally,
you can go peer level stuff.
Yeah, maybe that's just like you don't need to do that. Maybe you can still build. Can you think of off the top of your head? I know we got to wrap up in a couple minutes here, but can you name a successful SaaS company that you think is doing at least 7 figures a year? Say at least mid 7 figures a year. That is like super lean. You know, like 10 people or less. I
mean, we are close to this parameter.
Yeah, but others that come to mind, parameters. Like, is there like, oh, that shining example that like we were, you know what I mean?
I feel like that almost doesn't matter. Like,
sure.
You could just decide how you're going to build this business and probably make it work. So if you say like, I'm never going to have more than 10 employees and I don't care what the trade-offs are involved in that, like that's just like that constraint is important to me and I won't relax it, then like maybe you just hit this thing and maybe no one else has. Even if no one else has, you might just anyway because you just actually decided that's what you care about.
Yeah, I think you're right about that actually.
And you're Adam fucking Wathan. Plus like the whole like headcount thing too now, it's like if you're like, oh yeah, we are never going to go above 10. So we're going to like leverage like AI as hard as possible all the time. And like, it'll be ridiculous for us to add even one new person to this company. It's like, we're going to be like 3 people for years before we like surrender and accept we have to have 4 and we'll just like automate like crazy people.
Yeah. I think that can sort of work. I'm sure there's good examples of that. I'm still struggling to see like where that totally replaces people. Like, I don't think that totally replaces a programmer. I don't think it totally replaces a a designer. I don't think it totally replaces even a customer support person. You know?
I just really think if you go into this business and decide what your deal breaker parameters are, you can probably still be quite successful even with those constraints. And if it limits some of that success, then who cares? Because you've decided that those constraints are more important. So if it makes $4 million a year instead of $8 million a year because you refuse to hire an enterprise salesperson, fine. Like, who cares? Are you having a good time?
Yep. I think you're right. Food for thought.
All right, let's wrap on that.
Yeah, sounds good.
We did it. We made a podcast, even though you didn't rewrite Tailwind and Rust.
No. Yeah, that can be the episode title.
Not rewriting Tailwind and Rust. Sweet, man. Thanks for coming by. It was good to talk.
Of course.
All right, see ya.
See ya.